Hello everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, I am Douglas Johnson. I'm an ordained minister, yoga teacher, non-dual teacher, meditation teacher, certified Kilobi inquiries facilitator. And this channel, this page, if you're on Patreon, this community is all about deep, real spirituality and enlightenment. If you're interested in enlightenment, if you're interested in embodiment, if you're interested in ending your suffering, if you are interested in joy and peace and bliss in this lifetime, heaven on earth, nirvana, not waiting for another lifetime to experience these things. If you're interested in this lifetime, this is what we talk about here. So welcome. Today I wanted to speak a little bit about the cage of comfort, what I call the cage of comfort. But before I do that, I do want to thank all of my patrons and everyone who helps support my teaching. Either liking if you're on YouTube, subscribing if you're on YouTube, commenting on YouTube. Those are all things, ways you can support me. But I especially appreciate those who support me financially on Patreon. It really allows me to focus on this work and approach it as work, as something that I do that is financially supporting me, which is important. We all have bills to pay. We all have things that we need in terms of income. So I don't make a large income, but thanks to my patrons, I am able to do enough that I can take time out to make these videos. They're humble, but they actually take quite a lot of time and effort. So I do want to thank them. And if you want to become a part of that community, you can do so for as little as $1 a month, and you can check the links down below. So what is the cage of comfort? Well, if you have been following the discussions that I've been having, if you've been taking my classes, my yoga classes, if you've been watching the material I've been sharing from others, scientists, doctors, biohackers on the Patreon page, then you know that there are two kinds of stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. And what we want to do is minimize the bad stress and try and maximize the good stress. So unfortunately for us, even the good stress very often is uncomfortable, okay? And very often it's right where we get to the edge of our comfort zone that we are beginning to grow, that we are beginning to heal, that we are beginning to expand beyond our cage, you might say. So a great way of thinking of this is we all have a sort of mental, emotional, physical cage. And how do you know you're at the edge of your cage? You're uncomfortable. It's really quite simple. You're not comfortable, okay? Maybe you feel a physical discomfort. Perhaps you are at a cocktail party and you're not comfortable at cocktail parties, okay? And you might, in your own mind, be like, well, cocktail parties are stupid and people just talk about dumb stuff at cocktail parties. I hate them. They're a waste of time. Well, other people love cocktail parties. So thinking that they're stupid, and I don't love cocktail parties, folks, so I'm not trying to defend them or anything here, but cocktail parties aren't good or bad. They just are. And ideally, from our perspective of being enlightened and embodied, we want to enjoy everything. If we're at a cocktail party, then let's enjoy the cocktail party, right? We ultimately want to enjoy everything in life. Wherever we are, whatever we're showing up for, we would like that to be where our joy is. So cocktail party was just an example. Again, we have this in every realm of our experience as a human being. So physically, If I ask you to drop and give me 20 push-ups, 50 push-ups, 100 push-ups, at a certain point, you will reach a limit where you feel uncomfortable. You begin to think, I can't do anymore. You may even have thoughts like, oh, I'm hurting myself. Now, I do want to be clear. It is possible to hurt or harm yourself by trying to reach too far beyond your comfort zone, or by doggedly pushing always further and further and further, okay? So I do want to be clear about that, because some of you are Black Knights, and so some of you actually need to hear the opposite message, which is chill out a little bit. You don't always have to go full throttle. You don't always have to do more. You don't always have to do better. You don't always have to be the best. You don't always have to be perfect. Okay, so some of you need to hear that. But that's not what the subject of today's talk is. So please keep that in mind. Some of you want to maybe chill out a little bit. Now, here's the thing, though. It's not an all or nothing thing, okay? So you may be somebody who's really good, and I know several people like this, really good at pushing the emotional, the physical side of things. So, doing tons of push-ups, doing the hottest, sweatiest yoga class and loving it. And at the end being like, yes, I wish it was hotter. I wish it was sweatier. I wish we did more push-ups. The next day I'm sore. Oh my God, wow, I'm sore. That was such a good class, right? So there are people like that. But if you ask them to push beyond what's comfortable for them emotionally, you get a very different response. In fact, these two are very often paired together. It's not uncommon for somebody who is trying to avoid experiencing and feeling certain things emotionally to physically push themselves as a way of not experiencing the emotional. Okay, I hope that makes some sense, that we can actually avoid the emotional by pushing the physical as a way of sort of almost like an addiction. The physical discomfort, the physical pain, the chemicals that are released when we push ourselves physically can actually mask some of the emotional discomfort, heartache, things that we don't want to feel or see emotionally. This is not uncommon at all. So I really want to put that on your radar, make you aware of that. So again, it's not an all or nothing proposition here. You may be really good at pushing the envelope physically. You don't have a problem. More push-ups, yes. More vinyasas, yes. Let's do some handstands, yes. Let's do arm balance workshop, yes. Let's go for a run, yes. Let's hike, let's do a really hard hike, yes. Physically, yes, yes, yes. Push, push, push. Okay, let's sit down, be still, meditate, and feel. No. I want to go for a run. I want to go do that vinyasa class. I want to move. I want to exercise. I want to drink. I want to do whatever it is, right? I do not want to be still. I do not want to be quiet. So again, what you're seeing there is someone who is actually not only willing to push in a certain aspect of their life, but actually that pushing is masking another element, another area of their life where they are trying not to be pushed, if that makes sense. And very often what I see is they are actually sort of hurting themselves physically. These are people who push themselves so hard physically that very often their body starts to, have problems. Okay, they actually physically start to have joint pain or back pain, or they're always injuring themselves. Okay, so again, I'm thinking of real people, and if you think I'm thinking of you, I'm probably not. Okay, just FYI. Hey, so this is something that's worth keeping in mind, that this isn't an all or nothing proposition. We can have certain areas where we're okay pushing ourselves. So another area that many people in our culture are okay pushing themselves is going to be intellectually or work, right? So you go to work, your boss says, hey, I need you to pull an all-nighter. We got the big project. Okay, yeah, no problem. I can do that. You're going to get rewarded for that. It's uncomfortable, but it's a discomfort that you are okay with. And again, you see the reward, right? I'm uncomfortable at work. I work extra hours. I work extra hard. I get promoted. I get more money. I get praise. But again, are we then comfortable turning around and going for an 8-mile hike? We're comfortable at work pushing the boundary, intellectually pushing ourselves, but are we comfortable physically pushing ourselves? Now, the reason I bring this up is, again, from my perspective, the longer I do this, the more that I'm aware that this is really about balance, folks. I wish I could say that if you just tend to the intellect, the mind, if you just meditate and do inquiry, all your problems are going to go away. But I have to be honest with you, I don't believe that that's true. Okay? I think you have to tend to your mind, your heart, your gut, your physical body, your sleep, your relationships, okay? All of it matters. And when we tend to all of it, when we make that effort, we are rewarded with the joy and bliss that is our birthright as a human being. You were born to experience flow. And sometimes people hear that and then they think, oh, well, what about someone who was born with no legs? What about someone who was born into a war zone? What about someone who was born into whatever situation? I'll say this. I believe that we as human beings possess everything that we need to experience peace and joy and bliss in any circumstance, if we know the right approach, okay? So we have that capability. Is it easy? No, not necessarily. But if we're born without any legs, then that is our unique challenge for this lifetime. That is part of our karma. That is part of our dharma. We are meant to experience that. In fact, you could say perhaps our soul actually chose that as the experience in this lifetime. On the other side of it, same with the war zone, or same with abusive parents, same with a situation where children, our needs weren't met, which is very, very common, even for people with very loving, caring, well-meaning parents. It can still happen that because we're human, not all our needs will be met. And I think this is a very deep spiritual lesson that we need to learn at a certain point, is that no one will meet all of our needs. No one can. The only person who will meet all of your needs is you. And that is really your task and job, especially once you're an adult. As children, we are really dependent. We really need our parents, and we look to our parents to take care of us, nurture us, help us grow, and they do the best they can. This is the truth of it. Are they perfect? Did they meet all of our needs? Did they maybe really mess up? Sure, absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. Some parents are more awake than others. Some parents have a lot of issues, mental issues. Does that mean that we can't heal? Does that mean that we can't be whole? Does that mean that we are damaged beyond repair? Absolutely not. In my experience, I've seen too much to ever believe that. It does not matter how bad the past was for us, we can heal the past. In fact, we can change the past. I'll do another talk about that, what I mean by that in the future, okay? But I just want you to know that the past is not what most of us believe it to be, and we can change it. So the cage of comfort, what the scientists, the doctors, and the yogis, I would say too, I believe this is part of many spiritual traditions in one form or another. This teaching is in there. We want to seek out the good kind of stress, the good kind of discomfort. That's called our edge in yoga. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the physical postures. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the kind of emotional aspect, or we're talking about the mental aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it. We want to work at our edge. That's where we are going to get the most benefit. That's where we are going to help keep ourselves healthy and strong and not atrophy. And again, I want to be clear, these are concepts, many of them are being discovered in science and medicine and talked about on a physical, because that's what science, for the most part, is very good at. The physical reality, okay? Our physical experience. We can measure it, we can weigh it, we can quantify it, right? What science isn't so good at is the emotional, the psychological, the stuff that honestly really matters to us as human beings. Like I've said before, some of you have heard me say this, who cares if you have $1 million if you're miserable? Who cares if you're homeless if you're happy? Now, you might say that's not possible, but it is. It is possible. It's possible, in fact, for someone who's been born into a lot of wealth and privilege to lose it all and then find themselves actually happier than they've ever been. There's a book that you can read called How Starbucks Saved My Life, if you want to explore that idea. Again, this is a gentleman, real life person. I met him, an author, and he wrote about how he grew up with a lot of privilege, and he never really earned anything in his life until he lost everything and ended up working at Starbucks cleaning toilets. And when he was at Starbucks cleaning toilets, he got really good at it, and he took a lot of pride in what he was doing. He went to Starbucks because they had health insurance. He needed health insurance. And he left work one day and he had the thought, I've never been happier in my life. He was well into middle age. Again, he came from the white collar world, earning 6 figures plus easily. Old boys network, right? Went to the right school, met the right people, went to the right fraternity. And yet here he was, past middle age, got laid off from his well-to-do job, working at Starbucks and thinking, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life. How is that possible? Because he earned it. He earned it for the first time in his life. And it feels good to really earn something. I know other people firsthand, again, people I've met who've lost everything, lost all the wealth, lost all the influence, working as a manager at McDonald's. This is somebody I know personally, having a little tiny apartment, barely getting by, and thinking, I've never been happier in my life. And then going on from there to work, to go to Emory, work at the CDC, make a lot of money, be much more well off, much more influential, status, all of it, and be miserable. So again, we might not understand, we might not believe that these things are possible, but I have firsthand proof. Okay? So money, status, these types of things, really less important than we might think. I'm not saying they don't matter at all. I'm not telling you to go be poor, that that's somehow going to be more spiritual or you're going to definitely be happier. But we want to recognize that the physical part, the money, the status, all that stuff, it doesn't equal happiness. More money, more status, more influence, more recognition. It doesn't automatically mean we'll be happy. It also doesn't need to interfere with our happiness. So that's up to you. What I like to say is if you are happy, then money isn't going to take that away. If you're not happy, money is not going to bring you happiness either. So what the yoga tradition, what the Buddha, the way I read his teaching anyway, what they would encourage is focus on enlightenment. And what comes with enlightenment and embodiment is joy and happiness. Focus on that first, and then the rest doesn't really matter, whether you have a lot of money or not, whether you have a lot of influence or not. It doesn't really matter. You're happy, right? So the amount of money that you have, that's not going to matter that much. Yes, we all need some money, and most of us would rather have more than less, right? Granted, me too. Could I do different things, more things? Could I teach in a different way that would maybe be more impactful if I had more money? Absolutely, I believe that. Absolutely. Is that happening? Does it matter? Is that a showstopper if I don't have that? Absolutely not. Does that keep me from being happy? No. If one day more money and influence comes my way, I'm able to reach more people, great. I'm all for it. If not, doesn't matter. Doesn't impact my happiness. It's not going to ruin my life. I'm not going to die feeling like I failed somehow, that I didn't reach my full potential because, I didn't reach billions of people with my spiritual teaching. Not important. Not important at all. So the cage of comfort. How do I know I'm at my edge? I'm beginning to be uncomfortable. Again, could be a cocktail party. Could be a mental task. Some of you may have heard me say, and I'm going to continue to say, I've got some videos from others that I'm going to post about learning music, even if you're not musical, especially if you're not musical. If you've never learned a musical instrument, it does so much for your brain. Are you going to feel like a failure? Probably. Are you going to feel not talented? Are you going to feel frustration? Yes, that is your edge, okay? And I'm a lifelong musician. I still feel that way with music. I hope you understand that. Nobody masters music. No one does it all. No one. No one feels that way. You can become accomplished in one area of music. There'll be another kind of music, another area of music where you basically feel like a complete novice. If you're a master piano player and then I give you a drum set, you might all of a sudden feel like you've never played music in your life, or a guitar or a flute. Again, music is one of those things that is fundamental to being human, and it is infinitely deep. It's like yoga. It's like meditation. You never get to the end of it. You never exhaust its potential to challenge you. So there will always be an edge when it comes to music, even if you are a musician. Again, now many musicians get to a place where they're comfortable and then they stop pushing their edge. They just sort of rest there. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but they may miss the benefits of forcing their brain to learn new material, and the way that that will help keep your brain healthy and strong. Another way you can do that, of course, is just to learn something new. But in one of the talks that I'm not sure if I posted it yet or I'm going to post it, I usually do these Patreon posts way in advance. So again, if you're not checking out the Patreon page, please do. You can check it out for free. You don't have to pay just to see the post there. So get on there, check out what I'm posting by other creators, and see if you can't learn some things. There's very valuable content that I'm sharing there. So again, music is unique. I know I might sound biased, but it is. It's unique even amongst the other arts. It's fundamental. I think dance is fundamental in terms of movement, and music is fundamental just to being human. Music and dance, those two are very fundamental to being human. So I think having music in your life in some way with no intention of being a musician is a really, really valuable thing that you can do for yourself. You don't need to intend to ever perform for anybody, but what it does for your brain, the way it challenges your brain, is invaluable. And again, if you are a musician, you still get that benefit, because again, all you need to do is pick up an instrument you don't play. Try and learn a piece you can't play yet. Try and learn some polyrhythms or something in an odd time meter. Whatever it is, there will be challenge there for you, which again will challenge your brain and your body. So this is an edge. What can I do musically, comfortably? That's not my edge. That's not practice, okay? That's called performance. When you see me perform kirtan or play the lead guitar in one of the performances I do, I am probably operating 99% within my comfort zone. One of the reasons I like improvisation is you can actually get to your edge and out of your comfort zone. And there's something really magical and powerful about that, doing that as part of performance. So you're bringing in the unknown and you're really in the moment, because if I am really at my edge, I don't know what's coming next, and neither does the audience. So we're both, in a sense, watching what unfolds, because neither of us know. I've taken myself to the point of what I do know as a musician, what I can do as a musician, and I'm at that edge, the unknown, the interface. Now this happens in asana. So most of you know me as a yoga teacher and you've done some of my yoga classes. Well, this happens in our postures, right? What can I do comfortably, safely, easily? What have I done a million times in yoga class? That's not your edge, folks. That's the cage of comfort. Again, oh, I can do sun A's, I can do sun B's, I can do a warrior 2, I can do a warrior 3. Whatever it is, I'm not saying there's no value in doing that. There is value in doing that. But your edge is a very magical place. So as many of you know, I try and design my classes in a way where you are invited to find your edge. Whether you are brand new, in which case you might find your edge in the first 5 minutes. Being in a hot room, sweating and breathing, you might have the thought, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. That's understandable. There are many people in that, in your shoes, you might say. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's all relative. So for me, if coming into a yoga class, just being in a hot room with a bunch of sweaty yogis is taking me out of my comfort zone, then I'm already at my edge. And I'll mention this because it's worth mentioning. I had a student, a beautiful, beautiful soul, still I think a student. I haven't seen him in a minute, but he shared with me that when he first came to yoga, he felt like he was in the territory of the enemy. He really felt like he was not someplace where he was going to be accepted or loved. And so that's a kind of edge, right? He may not have had a problem physically doing the yoga postures. That may not have been his edge for him. The edge for him might have been a psychological edge. Okay, you're in this environment with all these, however he saw yoga practitioners, he may have felt they're not going to accept or love me. And this is somebody who really kind of embraces counterculture. And so, again, you might feel like as someone who embraces counterculture, the yoga mainstream isn't going to accept or love you. That's a very understandable perspective to have. So for some people, just showing up in a yoga class, it's going to be a psychological, a mental edge. They may have a deficiency story that relates with their body image, body ability. They may believe you are too old to do yoga. You are too inflexible to do yoga. You are too weak to do yoga. You're too injured to do yoga. That is a kind of edge. So putting those thoughts aside, this is a kind of a mental edge. Putting those thoughts aside and saying, no, I'm going to show up. I am going to try. I'm going to do my best. This is a kind of mental, psychological edge. And again, may have nothing to do with physically what you do. In fact, somebody like that maybe takes a child pose right at the beginning of class and just hangs out there most of class, tries to breathe, tries to be in the heat, tries to not run out of the room. Wow, that's great. That is a triumph. Okay? So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about your edge and this cage of the comfort zone. So how do we get out of the cage? What are we wanting to do here? Well, my recommendation is that you find your edge. And again, guys, please don't limit this just to yoga, but you can explore it in yoga, okay? So if you come take classes with me, I'd say especially the flow class. Yin, sure, there's an edge. For some people, yin is harder than flow. But for many people, it's going to be in flow. It's going to be in flow, where you feel like, I can't do more. I can't hold this any longer. I can't do another push-up. Whatever it might be, you're going to reach, I think most people will reach a stronger edge there. And then right there, you want to sort of stop and feel and notice what sorts of thoughts are coming up, what sorts of emotions are happening. You don't necessarily want to push too far beyond that, okay? Again, some people, we call them black knights very affectionately, beautiful people. I'm a black knight. Many of you are. It's not trying to put anybody down, but a black knight very often may constantly push and then push and then push and then push, try and leapfrog, far beyond their capability. And again, usually they wear the scars. So they're constantly injuring themselves, they're constantly hurting themselves. They're sort of wearing themselves out. Hopefully you have enough self-awareness that you can see if that's happening. Usually without cultivating self-awareness, we're just not going to even be aware of it. We'll just think, oh, that's my personality, that's the way I am, whatever it is. Very often it's not the way we are. It's a type of conditioning that we learned. And it's something that sort of drives us, but not necessarily in a healthy way. So the healthiest approach, again, from my perspective, is we find our edge. We find right where the discomfort begins. Again, that might be a cocktail party for you. That might be learning a musical instrument or singing. Some of you reach your edge when we do kirtan, right? Some of you aren't comfortable hearing the sound of your own voice. You have the thought, oh, my voice is ugly. I can't sing in tune, whatever it might be. This is an edge. It might be, again, I can't do hot class. It could be, I can't meditate. All of these things are edges. These are places where our mind or our heart or our gut or our body tells us we can't go. Now, let me be very clear. It doesn't really matter if we go there or not, ultimately, okay? So I'm not saying you need to overcome all of your physical illnesses and become an amazing triathlete. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm also not saying that you need to overcome all of your social anxiety and go to every cocktail party you're invited to. No, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm also not saying that you need to become an amazing musician, right? None of this is about accomplishment in the world. This is about freeing ourselves. So, as the name of the talk suggests, the cage of comfort. My comfort zone is a kind of cage. How do I get out of that cage? I take myself to the point where I start to become uncomfortable, and then I very mindfully, very carefully step out of the comfort zone. Again, if you understand the way that I sequence my flow class and teach my flow class, and you may not. You may have taken it and just been like, I don't like that. It's too hot and sweaty. It's too difficult. It's too weird. But if you understand how I'm thinking, the way I'm encouraging you to work, I am encouraging you to get to that point and to just explore slightly beyond. Now, can you get to a place where you're feeling uncomfortable because you're actually hurting yourself or because you're doing something you shouldn't do? Yes, absolutely, that can happen. And this is why we want to be very mindful and careful. If we are truly working at our edge, we will temporarily be uncomfortable. We'll experience a short-term discomfort. But what we'll begin to feel and experience is an expansion of our being, an expansion of our sense of what is possible for us. And that is a very beautiful thing to experience as a human being. And this has nothing to do with age. Okay, it has nothing to do with age. You might think, well, that's great for the kids, but I'm 50, 60, 70, 80. My life is over. I can't experience new things or open up new vistas. That is absolutely 100% not true. Okay? At any point in our life, we can expand and grow. In fact, I would say we need to. If we are going to experience, again, our birthright of joy, of peace. Again, I'm not saying you're going to learn something new and impress anybody with it. I'm not saying learn an instrument and then go give a concert and sell it out. That may never happen. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or if you're 80. That's not what's important. What's important, again, is the way we are stimulating our own brain, our own emotional center, which I refer to as the heart, our own psyche, in the gut and the body. These things were meant to be challenged by life. We as human beings show up and life shows up. And when there is a meeting of the yin and the yang, you might say, of our capabilities with the challenges that life brings us, we experience flow. We experience a joy, a sense of oneness that, again, what we are ready for is what life is bringing us. And we don't experience this when we retreat back into the known, what's safe, what's comfortable. We experience this when we're at our edge. We also don't experience this if we're too far out from our edge. So again, some people, again, I know people personally who are always reaching too far out. They have delusions of grandeur. Their eyes are set on the stars. I'm not telling you not to dream. I'm not even telling you not to dream big, but generally we get where we're going one step at a time, generally speaking. It was interesting, the musician Bonnie Raitt, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was the late 80s, if you were around, she all of a sudden experienced a huge amount of recognition and success, seemingly out of nowhere. It seemed like this woman, blues musician, seasoned, just appeared out of nowhere. No one had heard of her. All of a sudden, she comes and, takes over with hit song after hit song and a great sense of style and maturity. So some people, interviewed her and would say things like, wow, you came out of nowhere and all this. Bonnie Raitt has been around since the 60s. I think she started playing professionally probably in her teens, if not maybe her 20s. But when she found her success in the 80s, I think she was in her 40s or 50s. This is a great example of people think someone is coming out of nowhere, success out of nowhere, but this is someone who has been working their craft for their entire life. So what we want to do is continue to work on ourselves, not for recognition, not to get other people to admire us, not to perform in the world. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. We want to do this for ourselves. And again, I can only share my experience with you. This is what brings that sense of joy and expansion that we as human beings crave. I suspect part of this is that if you have a deep spiritual awakening, you come to recognize our true nature. And our true nature, part of its nature, is unlimited expansiveness. It does not know or have a limit. And that includes the joy and the peace and the deepening of that awakening, you might say. The embodiment of that awakening, I think, knows no bounds. At least I haven't found any. And most teachers speak about this, that it doesn't know a limitation. So when we as human beings, you know, in the Christian tradition, it's said that humans are created in God's image, in the image of the divine. And I think there's some truth to this when it's understood properly. And I think this is one of the aspects of our true nature that we as human beings, if we're willing to, we can embody. And in embodying that aspect of our true nature, we experience the joy of our true nature. So this is that, again, you may never impress anyone with your singing, but you can get better at singing than you are today. It doesn't matter how bad you are, and it doesn't matter if you ever get good enough that anyone gives you a compliment. You can still be better than you are. And I've learned this myself. As some of you know, I don't consider myself a singer. I don't consider myself a good singer. I'm much better than I was when I started singing and chanting and doing kirtan. I've greatly, greatly improved. I still don't consider myself particularly good. I'm much better than I was, okay? So teaching yoga, I can always improve. I'm always looking to improve. Music, playing the guitar, singing, anything I do, I'm looking to improve, to get better. Why? Not so I can impress anybody. I certainly want to improve so that I can help others. But also, again, there is just this innate sense of that's what we're here to do. We are here to expand and to grow and to experience and to push the boundary. Here's the difficulty with that for modern people like you and I. Our modern culture tends to emphasize comfort and safety above all else. Our parents generally will tell us to do the smart thing. They'll say, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and then you can do whatever you want. Then you can do whatever you want, right? You got the good job, you got the good grades, you've done everything right, and then you can go do what you want. Then you can push the boundary, then you can push the edge. Is this what people like Steve Jobs did? Is this what great musicians do? Is this what great artists do? They go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and then pursue what they'd like to do? Then pursue pushing the edge? Absolutely not. Now, I get it. We're not all great musicians, great minds. We're not all going to start the next Apple, okay? But there really may be a correlation between those minds and those people who are willing to step away from the safe and the comfortable, who are willing to explore the unknown, who then come back with the treasure of Apple computers. And then we all look back and say, well, of course, it's Apple computers, it's Steve Jobs. Well, when Steve Jobs started Apple computers, it wasn't Apple computers, it was Apple computers? Never heard of them. When Steve Jobs started, it wasn't, oh, Steve Jobs. It was who? Who? Steve who? Jobs what? Okay, so we forget this. This is true of musicians. Miles Davis, great musician, I admire wholeheartedly. He went to Juilliard for a little while. When he was there, his trumpet teacher said, "You are the worst trumpet student I have ever had." The worst. What did Miles Davis go on to do? He went on to push the boundaries in jazz music to help innovate several styles of jazz music. So bebop was the prominent style when he was coming along. Arguably, he was never a great bebop musician, but that's sort of where he started. But then he created cool jazz. He created jazz fusion, or not created, but helped to create along with other great musicians, great minds. So he was right there at the cutting edge almost for the rest of his life. No one would argue and say that Miles Davis isn't a great musician. Maybe not a great trumpet player, oddly. But again, he found his edge. He would push beyond what he had known, what was comfortable for him, and he would push that edge and discover new things. And now he is one of the greats. So again, I'm using examples that are bigger than life because we all know them, okay? If I say, Susie, down the street from me, you don't know Susie down the street from me. So it's not going to be as impactful. What I want you to understand, to appreciate, is you have your own hero's journey, okay? You are Miles Davis or Steve Jobs or any of these great people in your own right. But you have to step up to your own edge, okay? I can't really tell you where it is. You will find it. How do you find it? Where do you get uncomfortable? Again, is it in meditation? Is it at work? Is it in a social situation? Is it learning a musical instrument, learning to play, singing? What area of your life makes you feel that sense of discomfort? That's where your edge is. And if you're willing to look there, that is a gold mine. Now, sometimes we get to our edge and we find that we can't just push up to it or push beyond it. It feels insurmountable. Well, again, folks, this is where tools like inquiry come in, where we can dive into the psyche. We can find where the block is, and we can dissolve that block over time. I'm never going to try and tell you that inquiry is quick or easy, because for most people it isn't. But I will say that even one session can be impactful, depending on what the situation is and what we're working on. So again, if you'd like to do some inquiry with me, please reach out. And I do have a standard rate, but if you are in a situation where you find that you can't pay, you truly are in a situation like that, then we can work something out, okay? So many of you have heard me say this before, and it's really true. I don't want finances to be a block to you getting the help and doing the work that you need to do spiritually. Having said that, sometimes we might see ourselves as being in a financially hard place, and yet we own a home, we have 2 cars, we have health insurance, we're saving for our children's college. We have all this stuff going on. I don't have any of those things. So sometimes you have to put it in perspective. You may, from your perspective, with all the things that you need to pay for, feel like, well, I don't have money to pay Doug for his spiritual counsel. And yet, when we compare bank accounts, when we compare the amount of income that we have, when we compare our assets, we might find that I'm actually the one who's in the harder financial situation. I just make choices to try and live very humbly so that I don't have to have a job that pulls down all this money just to keep myself afloat. That's a very conscious decision. So please do keep that in mind. I am supported by you, my patrons, by people paying me for the work that I do. All of it is something that I've had to study and learn. So I've paid thousands of dollars to learn inquiry. And if you're going to benefit from my investment in myself and learning that tools, wouldn't it be right that I get compensated for that investment? I'll say I have not made that investment back by a long shot. I have not made thousands of dollars from doing inquiry. But I do believe it is a very valuable tool. I do believe for many of my students who are awake, many of you are awake, many of you are enlightened, but where some of you are stuck is you are not fully embodied yet. This, what we're talking about today, is very relevant for embodiment, because you could say in theory, and this is just in theory, you could say in theory, if you are fully embodied, your comfort zone is infinite. Your comfort zone is infinite if you're fully embodied. You are ready for anything. It doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you like everyone. It doesn't mean you need to love going to cocktail parties. But you might say that it becomes harder and harder for you to find an edge. Now, some people hear this and they misunderstand, and they think that what I'm describing is someone who experiences no emotion, someone who just is monotone, how many people envision a Zen master. I'll say how many of us envision a Zen master is not how real Zen masters are. So what embodiment is the ability to experience all of the human experience and emotions fully, completely, to allow them to blossom in us and to enjoy them. This is what we want. We want to enjoy the flow. Human emotions are gifts, folks, okay? A human body is a gift. A human life is an amazing gift. And if all we can think is that we are tolerating it, right? God, life sucks. My job sucks. My partner sucks. My children don't listen to me. This sucks. You know, this is tolerance. This is not joy. This is not bliss. And this is what I spoke about in my last talk. High baseline. Are we having fun yet? If not, from a spiritual perspective, we have work to do. And let me say, it's never too late to do that work. It doesn't matter if you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. There is bliss and joy to be had in this lifetime. Okay, in your life, there is bliss, joy, there is growth to be had. Never believe the thought that it's over or you're done. If you're listening to this talk, it's not over and you're not done. I promise you that. So, all right, everybody, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to encourage you, find your edge in every aspect of your life and work at that edge. Be mindful that you aren't constantly pushing too hard, okay? That you aren't hurting yourself, right? Are you on crutches because you were trying to run a triathlon? Well, then probably physically you're pushing your edge too much, okay? We also need to rest. There's a natural ebb and flow. You push beyond your edge, right? Your comfort zone. And then you can retreat back and rest in the comfort zone, in the familiar for a while, right? You recoup, you re-energize, and then you go back out and you push and you grow and you expand. And then perhaps you retreat back. Again, a very natural yin yang, inhale, exhalation. It's just life itself. So again, if I'm a black knight and I'm always pushing, this is not right. You want to be mindful. You need to ask yourself, am I doing that? I have all these injuries. Is that because I'm always pushing too far, too much? On the other hand, if you are what we affectionately call a panda bear or a gummy bear, then I'm always within the comfort zone. The world out there is scary. Cocktail parties are scary. Singing is scary. I'm not comfortable doing that. I don't like the sound of my voice, or what are we chanting about? I don't believe in this. Is this like Hinduism? I'm not going to chant, right? There's so much fear and trepidation there. So much, we're so reserved. We want to be mindful of that too. Now again, physically, what science is telling us is hermetic stress, what they're calling hermetic stress. Making ourselves uncomfortable intentionally, stressing ourselves out intentionally, makes the body healthier. That is right now scientific fact, okay? That's not my opinion. I didn't make that up. This is what the science is pointing us to. The more that we can intentionally stress our body, generally the healthier it's going to be, within reason, okay? That's where black knights sometimes overdo it. I shared in class the other day a little tidbit that I had learned from a scientist that I watched online. They said that they did a study where they had people who were competitive athletes who worked at a very high level. Then they had people who were moderate in their activity, and then they had people who were kind of like couch potatoes, okay? Couch potatoes, worst life expectancy, okay? They were the least healthy, they lived the least long, they had the most diseases and problems. The high performers, okay, better than the couch potatoes, but not as good as the moderate group. So what do we learn again? What do the Taoists preach? Balance. Yin and yang. Balance. So again, most of us, it can take quite a bit of self-awareness. Am I a black knight? Am I a panda bear? And again, it's not always across the board. You might be a panda bear in one part of your life and a black knight in another part of your life. So you want to try and identify that for your own sake, for your own good. But in general, we want to look for the comfort zone. We want to find where it is, and we want to gently push. I'll say this, for some black knights, the comfort zone, the discomfort zone is actually not pushing. For some black knights, the idea that I don't constantly have to be perfect, I don't constantly need to be at the front of the pack, I don't always need to be the best, that itself might make you uncomfortable. So again, another edge, another way to challenge yourself. Maybe you go to the Vinyasa class and you don't do every arm balance. You don't do every handstand. You take child pose when you want to, okay? All right, everyone, as usual, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or there's any way that I can be of help to you on your journey, please reach out, contact me. We can do inquiry together. We can work on non-dual pointers. We can do private yoga. We can do yoga nidra. There's so many things we can do. Check out the classes on the Patreon page. Those are free or donation based. If you're already a patron, then that may be part of your subscription. However you want to approach it. I try as much as possible to make my teaching available to all and leave it up to you how much value you're getting and how much you feel you'd like to support what I do. So as usual, everyone, namaste and have a beautiful, beautiful day.